Hey, I want to make this video because I had a lot of questions on how I studied for my last test. I only got one wrong on it, and I'm not a super genius. I only got an 80% on my first test. So this I found really helped improve just my ability to study, my study habits. Still working on my study habits because all I did was basically listen to podcasts and quiz myself using this notebook LM. So I'm just going to go over kind of how to set it up, how I study with it, active learning, basically like refining as you understand, creating different quizzes, things like that. So let's dive in quick. If you haven't used AI much or heard of Notebook LM, this has been one of my favorites lately. Previously, before I started school, I was working with AI daily for the last 2 years and have spent more hours than I care to admit with Claude, Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, all those different ones. And I found Notebook LM to be kind of the best one for learning. And what I really like about it is you can put in your own special sources and it focuses solely on these. You know, big thing with different stuff like Perplexity, Claude, Google, or not Google, ChatGPT is like they'll use the sources, but they'll still like do their other stuff. And this like almost pretty much exclusive, as far as I can tell, exclusively focuses on that. And the other cool thing, because anatomy and physiology is just such a well-studied topic, and very big. So many schools like teach it and everything like that, that there's just tons of information out there about that. So it's really been super accurate too. Um, but what you do is drop in all the sources. So I downloaded all the PDFs that Professor LeBeau had in Blackboard, his YouTube videos. I took all the transcripts from the different videos he had, and then I used the online OpenStax textbook. I downloaded that and copy copy and pasted each of the chapters on there, and then upload them all into here. And then what I did was I created a study guide from everything that was in there. So this is this study guide here. And really all I did for it was tell it to use the um, PDFs, which they don't have the pictures in there, but that I didn't really find an issue because he doesn't really have much for pictures on the test. Um, so the video part doesn't work. I'll get to that later. Created a study guide and just told it, hey, based on the PDF 1 through 4, create a study guide with a different section from each one of those. You got the peripheral autonomic nervous system and then the special senses. And then I asked it to add extra detail and context based on the transcripts and the textbook chapters. So you see, like, it added all this other stuff. And then what I kind of do is, as like I'm studying, I will be going like through this and kind of updating and refining it as I learn different things. Um, get to that in a minute here. And then the thing that I'm going to be playing with for this test is you see I have like everything in one, but I might break this up into like several different notebooks and focus each of them on, one on the central nervous system, one on peripheral, autonomic, special senses, and see how that does. I'll report back on that. But what I find super cool and super helpful on this is you can create these audio overviews, which are basically just different podcasts. I'll play one just to
Welcome
get an
back
idea.
to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something really focused. Think of this as the ultimate study session for anyone facing a big test on the human nerve.
All right, I need to jump ahead. Give it 1 second to catch up.
That's it. So by inserting the needle down at L4, L5, you're aiming for that space where there's mostly fluid and these loose nerve roots.
Which can just be pushed aside by the needle, presumably. Less risk of hitting the solid cord.
Exactly. Much lower risk of causing serious neurological damage.
Right, so you can see how it's this back and forth between the two of them. I've found that really helpful for studying because it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting when they're teaching each other. I think Professor LeBeau is a phenomenal professor, having gone through my undergrad already and done a couple semesters of nursing years ago at different college. Like he's one of my favorite professors I've had. So he's fantastic, but it's hard to listen to someone just kind of talk at you most of the time, and it's great just listening to these two go back and forth. Plus, what you can do is create different podcasts with different focuses and different lengths, right? So depending on maybe like what you're struggling with or what you want to focus on that day, if you want to go into the senses, you can create shorter, longer podcasts and ask it to focus on different things. And that's where I'm going to be playing with like having separate notebooks for each of the PDFs. But I can tell it, hey, give me one on just special senses, or hey, give me one just on peripheral nervous system, right? So, right now I have this as a full length one that's about an hour. This one's on the cranial nerves.
Welcome back to the
I forgot what I did with this one.
well,
So yeah, I have another one there. So you can have all these different podcasts that are going over different parts of the material, and you just click this little icon here, and then tell it what you want to listen to, how long you want it to be. Um, you can do other languages if English isn't your first language. I've only done the deep dive version. I don't know if really like the brief critique or debate would be very useful for our class right now. So stick to the deep dive. Um, and then as you're listening, you've kind of two options. Like you can just have a chat with it. So if there's specific things that you want to go into or kind of make some updates to the study guide or stuff like that, you can use it here and you'll see it's actually um, pulls from the source. And then like each of these is like specifically like here is talking about like what it's pulling from there. So it highlights the different sections and things like that. Um, so you know exactly like where all this stuff is coming from. So if you're unsure, it's like, is this like really actually it? You can go and look and be like, oh, okay, so here's where it's coming from in one of the transcripts. And you can double check that way. The other cool thing, um, are the quizzes. So if you've ever used Quizlet, this is kind of similar to that, where you can have these different quizzes in here. Um, and if you click on them, right, it'll tell you if it's right or wrong. It'll tell you a little bit more about the area. So it kind of gives you that reinforcement or explanation that way. If you click the wrong one, um, it'll tell you what that part is, so it can kind of help clarify things that way, and then also show you the right one. And as you go through and finish up, oops, yeah, you can see how well you did, right or wrong. You can review the quiz. I'll tell you all of them. You can create. But what I really like, and where I kind of found this has been a lot different from Quizlet, is like you either have to come up with your own questions or like use their AI version. And I didn't think it did a great job. And this one you can do a lot more. Whereas like I don't think you can give any kind of guidance in Quizlet for the questions, but this you can come up and just the same way as you create the audio podcast, you do fewer standard, more questions, easy, medium, hard. I like putting it on hard because it gives you more like thinking questions. I feel they're more similar to Professor LeBeau's questions that he does. But again, like you can direct it. It's like, hey, if you're really struggling with the cranial nerves, then you can say create a quiz just on the different cranial nerves and test yourself that way. And one of the really important things about studying effectively is not to just quiz yourself on the same questions or the same information each time, because then you don't really actually like learn it. You're more so just learning to recognize the questions and that answer. So with this, what you can do each time is create different quizzes, right? So for the last test, as I went through and listened to one of the podcasts each time, then I would create a new quiz, ask it different things to focus on, or just have different questions, and making sure that I was seeing those questions asked in different ways. And that really helped show me what I actually knew and didn't know, and could go back and redo it that way. Um, Yeah, and the brain, or excuse me, not the brain. The chat here is, a second brain study buddy type of thing that you can use as well. Oh, they've got an interactive part two. Let's pull this up.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, tackling a huge topic, the central nervous system. This is all about helping you get this stuff. Oh, our listeners got something to share. Let's hear it.
Can you tell me how cerebral spinal fluid helps protect the brain?
Oh, that's a fascinating comparison.
I love that. Scripts like the brain.
If you think about it, the brain is like the ultimate script writer and director, right?
Yeah, it's managing everything.
It takes in sensory input, which is like the scene setting,
The environment.
and then it runs these complex pre-programmed.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
Sorry, I misunderstood me. I was asking how the cerebral spinal fluid helps protect the brain. Can you explain that to me more and help me remember uh, that function?
That is such a good question and absolutely central to understanding the CNS.
We were just about to dive into the cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF.
Think of CSF as a liquid cushion. That's the key protective function.
It's about 80 to 150 milliliters of fluid that surrounds the
The
brain.
brain is heavy, around 1,500 grams.
If it were just sitting there, it would crush the delicate tissue at the base.
But floating in CSF, it's a
Probably wasn't the best question to ask, but it's still early. So, what the main point of that is you're able to kind of like as you go along these podcasts, dig into different parts of it. So if there's something that you're just not clicking for you, you can ask it for different like memory aids, analogies, stuff like that, so that you can get it further, or even just ask it to go like, hey, can you just like go back on that? I can't say like how many times where I was listening to this and just kind of spaced out for a little bit. And I was just like, hey, could you go back and like talk to me more about this? I totally spaced out, and gives you a more interesting version of it. So that's pretty cool. I've heard mind maps can be good for learning stuff. I'm still kind of like digging into that. But it'll create a mind map based on all the information for you, and then you can click on each of them, and as you can see, it pulls it up. So that's another thing that you can do with it and use it. But what I really love, and think is so cool is like it gives you a more like active and engaging like learning process where you can go back and forth with the chat. You can have it create the different quizzes each time. Again, like as I go through it, I'm going to be refining the study guide, adding different things I think are important, as the taking my lecture notes, stuff like that. Add different things in here. So it really just like made studying actually like a bit more enjoyable. Helped me form connections better, because you can talk to it and ask it like, hey, how does this relate to other things? Help me connect this with that. Because that's another thing too, is like when you're learning and the way the brain works is the more connections you can make to different things that you already know, the easier it is for your brain to recall it. Like a lot of times, a big reason that we struggle like remembering new things that we learn is our brain just doesn't have enough connections to it yet. And like without kind of nerding out too much, getting too deep in the weeds, um, just know that like the more connections that you can make to a topic to other things that are familiar to you, whether like if you're a CNA and you're doing different stuff that way, like connecting to that. If you're an athlete or big into sports, like a lot of this stuff has, different crossover to that. So you can have AI help you like word and understand things around topics that you already understand. So that's another cool way to use that. And I think that's really it. So the last thing I have for the special bonus surprise for those of you who have stuck through the video is below this YouTube video. I have included all a link to this Google Drive folder that I created that's got all these sources here, plus a link to this as well. So if you're curious and want to like actually listen to one of these podcasts or check out one of the quizzes, you can do that and see. You can't actually like make your own stuff just by like reading mine, but it's a good intro to see like actually like how one of these podcasts sound or one of these quizzes do to see if it's something that you want to do. And if you like this as a learning style, this is all of the sources that I have all in one spot so that you can literally just like upload all these files, just download them and then upload them into the source here. All you have to do is get them from there. Or I think you can actually, yeah, copy, like duplicate the Google Drive folder. I don't know if you have it on your side, maybe you're able to duplicate it. But yeah, you can do that, and that'll get you started and give you a chance to like use this without having to set it all up yourself. So I hope this is helpful, and if you have any questions, feel free to bug me in class. That's all I got.